full-time job, and your illustration work is something that you have to do around that.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to talk about that. How do you stay motivated to actually do illustration work?
I guess motivation has never really been too much of a problem for me. You know, getting to like, you know, put pen to paper isn't. It's really never something I don't want to do.
Right.
Like there's very rarely a time where I haven't been drawing for, you know, 10 hours and I want to take a break.
Mm-hmm.
Just because it's, you know, I think it's fun and I'm generally pretty excited about the ideas I come up with. But I guess it's, you know, it is exhausting trying to get home from an 8-hour shift at like 6 p.m. and then be like, okay, like time to start another job. And also, you know, a lot of the time you do have to choose between, am I going to look for work tonight and possibly not be able to take on those assignments because I don't have enough time, or should I just keep making pieces and just keep making my artwork and putting it out there?
Right.
And it's hard to make that decision because while you keep putting your work out there, yeah, you might sell a couple prints here and there, but you're working a second 8-hour job without income. It's like willingly clocking into another job after you've already worked 8 hours that day and you're already tired and you already just want to sit down and watch TV.
Right.
And, you know, willingly being like, okay, I'm not going to get paid for this. I'll go. Yeah.
But the hope is that eventually you will be paid, and I know you've been paid for work. It's not like you've never been paid for work. It's just that right now you do have a full-time job, and so the illustration is like supplemental. It must be a little bit, because I was thinking about your situation. So Taylor is also an illustrator.
Yeah.
And so she's not going to be, you know, like when you get home from work, she's perfectly happy to draw while you're drawing. It's not like, you know, if you're in a relationship with someone that's like, hey, pay attention to me. You've been at work all day.
Yeah.
And so that must make things a little bit easier.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and also like having a support system at home where you do get to crit each other's work, you know, like being in a relationship with another artist is invaluable. Like just being able to, you know, we share the same studio space. We just work at opposite ends of it. So just being able to, at the drop of a hat, turn and be like, hey, what do you think about this? Is this working? And it's, you know, it's like having that art school critique back. You know, she also went to the same art school we went to.
Yeah.
So being able to turn and say, what do you think about this? And get an objective opinion about it. You know, she does children's book, like adorable art. And, you know, she's a painter. So we work in different mediums. We work in different conceptual spots. So I think being able to critique our work is really beneficial to both of us because we get to separate ourselves. There's no trying to like control each other's work or anything like that. But you know, it's kind of about investing in each other and being able to take that time.
Mm-hmm.
And also, you know, you were saying, you know, keeping your motivation up and like after not getting paid for this or that work and hopefully getting paid later, you are investing in yourself. You know, you're sacrificing other time where you might go hang out with friends or sleep. Like, you know, I sacrifice a lot of hours of sleep just so I can keep drawing because it's what I want to do. It's more exciting than sleeping, you know. So I think that's something that you're investing in yourself, and yeah, maybe the investment doesn't come through the way you thought or anything like that, but you know, why not? Why wouldn't you take the extra time, especially while you're not 50 years old or 60 years old?
Right, you've got plenty of time to figure things out and you know, work on what you want to do. And so going back to, like, you said you have like a built-in critique because the person that you're in a relationship with is like also an illustrator. And first of all, I used to think like that I was my worst critic. You know, like that's how most people feel, like they're their hardest critique. But like being married, I don't think I am anymore. Like, like my wife definitely is like the most critical of my work, which is like I tell her that I don't appreciate it, but I do appreciate it in some ways because like, you know, especially if I'm doing like an illustration of a caricature of someone or you know something like that, she will definitely tell me that does not look like the person. You, like, keep going. You're not there yet. And so like I said, I used to think I was my hardest critic, but I'm not, and now I know who is. So is that the case in your situation too, or is it?
I wouldn't say so. I mean, I definitely wouldn't call Taylor like a harsh critic, and I don't think I'm like a harsh critic of her work either. But like, you know, it's generally we'll talk to each other when we have a question, you know.
Yeah.
It's kind of rare that we'll actually like hang up the work and be like, oh, like do a full crit. So
Right,
it's
it's
usually
not like you're doing a real critique, but she probably doesn't blow smoke either. I'm assuming she
yeah,
doesn't tell you something is awesome when she can see there's things that need to be fixed. Right, she's
yeah,
gonna
yeah,
be
exactly.
real with you.
Yeah, exactly. Which you know is obviously always beneficial because you just don't see things sometimes. Even
No,
if you know,
don't.
sometimes
No,
I'll ask a question and be like, you know, hey, is this type working here? And sometimes she'll be like, let's forget about that. This is not good. Like this doesn't look good. You know,
you shouldn't
you'll
even be
like,
worried about the type yet. You haven't got
exactly.
the illustration even close, right?
Exactly, yeah, and that's always so good to hear. Or just you know, I feel like it's hard to make decisions sometimes on the spot with traditional medium. You know, when you've reached that point where you're looking at the piece and you're like, I feel like this is the turning point of like, should I do this? Should I not do this? What color should this be? You know, so she'll like turn to me all the time and be like, what color should I make these shoes? You know, and like this kid's shoes, like she's like, I was gonna make them yellow, but now they're gonna look bad. You know, and we can just have that conversation real quick.
And you know you're asking someone that actually has like a real lot of experience doing it, and she's going to give you good advice.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
So my wife doesn't have like an art school degree or anything, but she definitely can tell me when someone doesn't look like who the person I'm supposed to be drawing is. You know, like anybody can do that. So that's what I mean with critique. She doesn't really critique my work. That's pretty much the only time she actually critiques my work. Is if I'm doing like a portrait of someone, she'll just tell me if it doesn't look like them.
Yeah. Well, I think that's really beneficial though, because I often want a bit more of a, well, especially conceptually, a look into the way that people who aren't, you know, fully invested in like art, what would they think about this piece? Are they going to be like, ooh, that is really dark, you know? Because that happens sometimes where I'll ask Taylor like, you know, and she does the cutest work ever. So
her work is like so different than your work.
Exactly. So you'd expect somebody like that would be, you know, as offended as somebody would get about really dark work like mine. But that's not the case because she appreciates dark work and she likes that stuff, you know, or she can at least, you know, see from going to art school and being able to appreciate different concepts and different veins of art. She can at least see how it would be great. So she might say like, "Oh, that's awesome," and then like I'll show somebody, you know, I mean, my parents would be a bad example because they like the cool stuff too. But you know, I'll show somebody who's not really that into like art, and they're like, "Whoa, that's really dark," and I'm like, "Really? I guess so." Yeah. All right, that is pretty dark. You know,
it's weird. I do the same thing with some of my work because I don't do like horror stuff, but I do have like some humor in some of my work, and I'll never think it's that big a deal, and someone will be like, "Oh, that's dark." Mm-hmm. Like, really? That it doesn't seem dark to me. But I guess like you just have a mindset, you know.
Yeah.
But because I don't think your work is that dark. I think it's like most of it's funny to me.
Yeah. Well, and it's kind of like poking fun at dark things, which is, you know, it's not like a new.
But you do it in like a,
people have always done.
I don't want to say cutesy way because it's not cutesy at all. Mm-hmm. That's a bad word. But like, you know, like it's like a Casper the Friendly Ghost kind of thing. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you know, you're making these drawings that. The themes are maybe dark, or the comedy is like a little bit off or dark, but it's done in a way that's like palatable to anybody. I think anybody, like you said, when we had the arts, that we have like a holiday sale at Maine College of Art, and anybody can sell whatever you want there if you're going there. And you had those like what do you call those things, like handkerchiefs, I guess.
Oh yeah,
with
little bandanas.
Like different pun drawings, and they were dark, but. It was always like old ladies that would laugh at him and stuff. It was people you wouldn't even expect.
Yeah, I that's actually something I thought was really funny. The last sale I did the picnic holiday sale at Thompson's Point in Portland, and it was so funny because all these people were walking by, you know, just the people I would associate as, you know, my crowd or something, you know, like tattooed and, you know, look like they were ready to have some fun with it, and a couple of people would just be a little kind of disgusted at the dark humor.
Right.
Because there are a couple that I've made recently that are a little bit more, like I'll use the character of death to like be in different comical situations, and people got like kind of ticked off, and then these like old ladies would think it was so funny, and they'd be like, I totally, like, that's wicked funny. I'd be like, is it because you have a better understanding of death and you can like kind of like laugh about the way life goes, or like, you know, what is it about that that gets people.
But the way, like I was saying, the way you draw them is very palatable to anybody. So it's like, you know, it's the character death, but it's like campy. It's like the old school one with the sickle. You know, it's not like some people are really taking. I mean,
it's not like somebody in a hospital bed, like
right, or just like you know, people have just taken characters like Batman. Like how he doesn't look. The Batman today doesn't look anything like the cartoon character of Batman or like Adam West's Batman. They've come so far, and they've tried to turn it into something so dark and creepy. But you're not doing that because you're taking like this character of death that's got like the sickle, and it's like you're not really changing him much. You're just putting him in different situations. Yeah, and it's humorous, but it makes it palatable because people have seen that type of image for so long. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't know if I'm saying it right, but
no, I think you are, and I think that it's definitely something I've had to. I wouldn't say struggled with, but I've had to like kind of weigh out over time, where the balance of grit and dark macabre themes mixed with campy, lighthearted humor is it's definitely a balance that I sometimes miss really, really far, and that's often where like Taylor comes in and huge handy. Yeah, because I'll show her a concept sometimes, and she'll be like, "It's hilarious, but you cannot draw that." I'm like, why? Yeah. She'll be like, "Dude, you don't see how this is a problem. Like people will not think this is funny. I get that you think it's funny. I think it's funny.
Other people
don't do
might
this
not,
one,
right?
Yeah, because kind of the balance of light and dark is just a little too far off. Yeah, where there's suddenly different themes at play that I hadn't implied at all. Yeah, and she can step in and be like, ooh.
So it's weird sometimes. Like you take something that isn't necessarily supposed to be dark or creepy, and when you put it in like a dark or creepy setting, it makes it way more creepy than something that is creepy. Like I think that's why people are so afraid of clowns, for instance. Like you take a clown, which is like this goofy character that makes balloon animals and juggles or whatever, but then you put it like in a horror film where it's like the killer, and now that's like way more creepy than if it was just a normal killer. You know what I mean? It's like, because this is a clown. This is like. So you're contrasting these two worlds that are like so far apart, and it makes it like way more over the top weird.
Yeah, and I think that's why I, at like a very young age, started to latch onto horror in a big way, just because especially seeing how adults were so scared of fictional characters, and like how I would get so scared. Just like as a little kid, I would always go into the horror aisle at the movie store. And it was so much fun for me. I loved seeing the art on all the boxes, and I'd turn them around, and not being able to see any of the movies at 5, 7, 10, whatever. I would kind of fill in the blanks on my own,
which is probably even scarier than if you actually just watch them.
Well, because then it's like tethered to you and your fears and what you would think was scary. So I think that's what really made me latch on. Is I would stay up all night because I'd be so freaked out from the back of Evil Dead or something like that I was just like, I had never seen it before. I had to fill in all the blanks of what actually happens in this movie. I'd be staying up all night thinking about it, just terrified. Yeah. And then for some reason, the next time we went, I would always go, and I loved that. I thought that was so funny. Like, not at the time. I mean, at the time I'd be scared in my bed. Right. But the next day I would always think it was so hilarious that I was so scared and I wanted to go back, and that I would see adults watching these movies and they'd be so scared. I'd be like, you're an adult. And I still feel that way. I love being scared. I love that irrational fear, and I think it's good to be able to laugh at yourself about that, about being afraid.
No, it's definitely true. And I know when you're a kid, like, I know when I was a kid, I was definitely scared of tons of things. And you do think, like, when I'm an adult, I won't be scared anymore. Like, I'll grow out of it, because my dad's not scared. Like, if I think there's a monster under my bed or whatever, my dad's going to come in the room and be like, nope, there's not. Yeah, so exactly. I'll be like that when I get old. I won't be scared at all. But fear is a real thing that is in everybody, no matter how old you are.
Yeah, and we all have even just despite ourselves those little moments where you might be walking to your car late at night or something. Oh yeah, and you're just you just get that weird feeling. I don't know. I feel like that's a feeling I've always wanted to chase, and there's something funny about it to me.
It just happens when you don't know it's going to happen. Yeah. It's hard to actually try to capture it and give make other people feel that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's cool that I think that you're trying to do that in your work, and it definitely works in a lot of cases, which is really cool.
Thanks.
To capture that feel.
Yeah,
but,
it's kind of, it's a delicate balance though, because really you also don't want to like make it seem like you're preying on actual fear, because like I'm not, I don't enjoy like the actual fear in the world and like the terror that goes on in the world, obviously, because what kind of person would I be?
It's more you like the irrational fear, like you're scared of things that aren't even real, but for some reason I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing that I sometimes will, just in an idea that I have, I think that it fits perfectly into like irrational fear, and then as soon as I show Taylor or something, she might be like, "Oh, that's like actually like in this way crossing over," and I'll be like, "Oh my god, I totally didn't make that connection." That like suddenly the way that I've drawn this out and the characters that I've used, suddenly it gets put into this very real fear place, and I'm like, "Oh."
Sometimes with your own work, it's hard. You just don't see things other people are going to see.
Absolutely.